If you have a window that won't stay up or is hard to open, this video might show you how to repair that window. I'm How To Bob. Let's take a look at this window. As you can see, I lift the window up and it won't stay up, so we're going to go ahead and do a repair on this particular window here. Most windows have little clips on the sides here. That holds the window into the channel on each side, so I'm going to remove the bottom sash. So I need to lift my window up just slightly and then push the clips in and it'll slide out. Then I want to tilt one side higher than the other and the pivot rail will come out of the pivot shoe. Now you can see the pivot shoe here is going to be different from what I'm going to put in there, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to take the old pivot shoe out. These kind of pivot shoes here have a tendency to break right at the screw hole right here, so I'm going to just go ahead and replace it. Looks like the other side's already broken and it's inside the bottom of the window, so I'll take the two screws out of the bottom of the sash here, and then this is the other one. This is the old one, and you can see that's the weak point right there. This is what I'm going to replace it with. It's a channel and it's a lot stronger, so it won't match up with my pivot shoe, but you can tell the pivot shoes are broken. This is the new pivot shoe, and you can see it's got a U-shaped channel in it. So I want to mark where I'm going to have to drill my hole, and the hole will be where the screw goes, and that screw is just going to hold it into place. So once I get my hole marked, I can go ahead and drill the appropriate sized hole, and then I'll slide my pivot rail in, and it only goes in the one way. It has to go in like this, so that the screw will catch hold of the threads. And I'm going to tap it in gently with the hammer, and the other piece of the old pivot shoe will slide down into the window. I'm just going to leave it in there in this one, and then I can screw into the pivot rail. Now that's attached and it's sticking out right to the line on the pivot shoe, so it's about how far it needs to go. I'm going to repeat the process on the other side. You can see the line right here. So once I get that to the edge of the window, I can mark where the hole needs to be drilled and drill the hole for the other side. Once the hole's drilled, I can go ahead and slide my pivot rail down in, and I'm going to tap it in with a hammer and line the hole up with the hole that I drilled and put my screw in. Now I've got my pivot rails done. The next thing I have to do is get my pivot shoes, and there's usually a cover over top of the balances or over top of the channel, and you can see this is a spiral balance. So I have a spiral balance tool here. It's a balance tool. What that does is hold the spring, but you can use it needle nose pliers here. Just have to be a little more careful. These are under tension, so you want to raise them to the highest position. That tends to relieve a lot of the tension. So this is my balance. It's a spring spiral balance, and I need to remove that. So I'm going to go all the way up to the top here and take that out. Next, I have to remove my old pivot shoe. So I'm going to take my new one and mark it on the channel. There's a channel. This is the only way you can get your old one out. So I marked it here. That's the width of my other one, and you can see it's just going to slide up and down this channel, but there's no way to get it in there or get the other one out. So I have to cut a piece of the channel, and I do it up high, and I do it on the back of the channel, kind of out of the way, because the shoe will never go that high with a window like this. So I just use my oscillating tool. You can use a Dremel, a rotozip, whatever you have. A real sharp utility knife will work just as well. So I've got my channel cut here, so I can remove my old one. All I need to do, let me clean this up a little bit here, but all I need to do is slide the old pivot shoe up to my slot and then just kind of pop it out, pry it out from behind there, and you can see this one's pretty much destroyed. So here's my new one. It matches up with my pivot rail, and I just tap it in and it goes right in, and you can see it slides real easy, a lot easier than the other one. So I'm going to repeat that process on the other side. Take off the cover, and you can see there's one screw at the top holding the balance in place. So next I'm going to mark the spot where I need to cut in the channel with my new pivot shoe here. So I've got my spots marked, Then I'm going to grab my oscillating tool and make my cuts. And it really doesn't take much to cut this vinyl. Cuts fairly easy. You could use a utility knife, like I said, or another Dremel or any other sharp tool that you have that would cut through this. It just seems to be what I had. Seems to work pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. So once I get that cleaned up, I will push up the other shoe here, pivot shoe, and pry it out. And you can see this one's pretty busted up here too. There's no place for the balance to hook into at the top here, so that's why I'm replacing it, because it's missing a part across here. And again, this is the new one. It's going to match up. It's got a U channel. It's got a U spot for the channel or the pivot rail at the bottom. So I'll tap that in to my channel here. And you can see again, that slides a whole lot easier than the other one. Now that I have my pivot shoes in place, I'm going to go ahead and put the balances, the springs, back on. And I just put those back up and tighten down the screws. Once I get the screw tightened up, I can go ahead and do the other side. Now my next step will be to attach my pivot shoe to my balance. So the pivot shoe here is going to go up to the balance, but first I want to preload my spring. So I'm going to use my spring winding tool, and I'm going to give it a few turns here in either direction, and you'll feel it starting to get a little pull to it. So then I'll slide my pivot shoe up and I'll pull it down slightly and hook it into the pivot shoe. Now you can see if I pull down on this, there is tension on it. So I'll just repeat the process, and I want to give it a few turns. Don't want to give it too many turns or your window will go up automatically. You don't want to give it too few or it'll make the window too hard to open. You want to find a happy medium, usually around 3, 4, anywhere up to 6 turns on a balance like this, depending on your window. Now you can see that I'm bringing this pivot shoe down and I turn the screwdriver quarter turn. What that does is lock the pivot shoe in place. So I brought it all the way down towards the bottom and I lock it into place, and I put one up a little bit higher than the other. That way I can put my sash back in, and it's a whole lot easier if you have one just a little bit higher than the other. That way you can set one part of the window in one pivot shoe and you can see the other one will go into the other one. So here we go. I'm going to put my pivot rails into my pivot shoe, and then the other one will line up. You may have to try this a couple times. It looks like I've got that lined up pretty good here. Once I get it in, I'm going to even out the window just a little bit by pulling up on the lower side, and then I get it straight. Then I can pull my window up and lock it into place. So all that's left to do is put my covers back in the channels over top of the balances. So this is how you repair a window. I'm How To Bob. Thanks for watching.